I'm educational justice coach Lindsay Lyons, and here on the Time for Teachership podcast, we learn how to inspire educational innovation for racial and gender justice, design curricula grounded in student voice, and build capacity for shared leadership. I'm a former teacher leader turned instructional coach. I'm striving to live a life full of learning, running, baking, traveling, and parenting because we can be rockstar educators and be full human beings. If you're a principal, assistant superintendent, curriculum director, instructional coach, or teacher who enjoys nerding out about co-creating curriculum with students, I made this show for you. Here we go. Welcome to episode 240 of the Time for Teachership podcast, continuing this series of kind of school transformation, school redesign, school leadership and leading change. I want to talk to you about such an exciting book. I mean, a truly transformative book that was just released a few months ago. And as of the time of this recording was released like a month ago or less. Rebuilding Students' Learning Power, Teaching for Instructional Equity and Cognitive Justice by Hammond. My goodness, this is incredible. So we're going to talk about kind of the key ideas from this book. I'm hoping to have Hammond on the podcast. That would be so incredibly exciting. And as we work out scheduling, stay tuned for that. But here are kind of the big things that I got from the book and takeaways that I want you to have in preparation for listening and diving deeper with Hammond herself. Here we go. So I really love that she grounds the work and the book itself in 3 pillars of liberatory education right from the get-go. One is personhood, which includes like humanized learning environments, like the whole self, right? We're full people. 2, and this is the kind of crux of the book, information processing power. So this includes these learn-to-learn skills that she dives into in the book, just to get to deeper learning, critical literacy, creative thinking. Like the foundation of all of that stuff are those learn-to-learn skills and being able to process information. And finally, of course, agency. So connected, of course, to the student voice we're always talking about, self-directed learning, and being able to advocate for meaningful experiences for themselves. So I think this idea of personhood, information processing power, and agency as this 3-pillar stool that we're excited about and getting into is just a wonderful, I think, orientation to the work. Now, she talks also in the introduction of this idea of we've had a pedagogy of compliance for far too long. This is very common, and it's a pervasive mental model that a lot of us have. So a couple of those hallmarks include favors orderliness over productive struggle, low tolerance for mistakes, and minimizing opportunities for kids to talk. I mean, we constantly, as teachers, I myself have a podcast. I talk a lot. We are constantly trying to share information, teach by talking, and we've talked about a lot on the podcast and even pulled goal percentages from Street Data, the book Street Data, for how often kids should actually be talking. So I love that kind of student-led discussion can actually be a disruptor of this pedagogy of compliance. And in this or en route to this pedagogy of possibility, that she calls it. And so in order to get to this pedagogy of possibility, she talks about a lot of different things, and we'll dive into a few here. But I do just love that she focuses on the instructional core. Like, we have to focus on the instructional core. We can't just have, kids talking about like what they liked about the cafeteria lunch, right? We can't just do all of these things that might satisfy a desire for belonging in the external school space, but don't actually change anything about how we teach kids how to learn, right? And so in service of that, she talks about teaching students learn-to-learn skills and critically encourages teachers to reduce the excessive scaffolding. I'm going to say more on that in a moment because I think this is really important. And really make sure that there are many opportunities that we are actually coaching kids how to think. Like, we're giving them opportunities to develop their meta-strategic thinking and metacognition, and we're actually having one-on-one instructional conversations, which she says are required. Like, these one-on-one conferences, they're not like a nice to have, they're a need to have. And we're coaching students. I love that she calls it like kind of a personal cognitive algorithm. We're helping kids learn to figure out how they're learning and what cognitive tools they have that align with, what works for them, what's available to them, and get to learn on their own, so that it's not just our class they're benefiting in, right? It's all classes. It's all both in and outside of school learning experiences. And of course, to do this well, we have to have the structural support from policy and administrators and
be able to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of what the goals are regarding instructional coaching and instructional leadership. Ideally, what we have when we create this space for leaders is we have, excuse me, for students and learners, is that we have independent learners, not dependent learners. And she talks about how really you want those independent learners to be able to perform their own kind of gap analysis, where they're saying, like, how do I get from where I am to where I want to be, right? What needs to change so that I can, improve my skill, improve my conceptual understanding. I do love that she talks about conceptual understanding a lot, having just read James Nottingham and the importance of conceptual understandings and grasping a concept. This was really, really powerful for me. And if you haven't listened to the James Nottingham episode, please go back and listen. That was a few months ago. Really phenomenal conversation about his recent book, Teach Brilliantly. The third question she says, is like, how well am I grasping this concept? So again, conceptual knowledge. And then where are my leverage points for adjusting my learning tactics? So again, that meta-strategic thinking. What tools do I have that will support me? And I don't want to give the whole book away. I mean, this is kind of like her introductory chapters. But I just love this orientation. As we think from a school transformation lens and a school design lens, are we focused on the instructional core? Are we thinking about cognitively coaching kids and making sure that they have a sense of how they process information and what cognitive tools they have to be able to get better at it? Are we taking time and making sure that amidst all of the typical school redesign, or maybe we're not, if we're lucky, doing all the typical school redesign things like grabbing a high quality instructional curriculum, handing over a pacing guide and saying, follow this to a T, right? And I love that Zaretta Hammond gets into pacing guides in a sense, like we need to not just follow them rigidly, right? When we are actually responsive, putting the responsive in culturally responsive teaching, right, which we often forget or sidestep or choose not to do because of these external pressures like pacing guides, we don't enable kids to figure it out at all at different paces in different ways because they have different personal algorithms. So we maintain the high expectations, but we take the time to responsively coach students and have one-on-one conversations, even if they're just 3 minutes long. Okay, so I really love this idea. I think the big thing I'm latching onto is this idea of cognitive coaching or this cognitive apprenticeship. She calls it, teachers as what she calls cognitive mediators, and supporting students' meta-strategic thinking so that they can be better information processors. Like, I love this thesis that this is what we are here for. This is what real school transformation is about. And as we are trying to grow structures and processes for great schools, I think this should be at the core. So ideally, you are able to work with Zaretta Hammond for multiple years and in an ongoing way, because that's what this truly requires. If you are not, please buy her book and dig deep into this. But I think there's so many spaces for us to think about as individual educators, as instructional coaches and leaders, as teams, like departments or in our team meetings and our PLCs. How do we center this work? I know I've talked a lot about PLCs in the past year and had some great experts on and folks who have published wonderful books with concrete strategies around looking at student work and aligning expectations and standards. I also highly encourage people to utilize the time, as Zaretta Hammond suggests, to practice that one-on-one coaching with students, because it is so unfamiliar. This is something that we have not experienced in our teacher prep programs, most likely, and is going to require a big mental shift, a huge, increase of skills in terms of being responsive and thinking about all of this maybe new information that's new to us as well as students around information processing and how cognitively our brains work to, take in new information and connect it to what we already know and make it stick, right? So I will just share a couple things from her book, and I'll do a quick version because I think I want to give you a taste and I want you to actually dig into the whole book, because it was one of those books where I was folding down every other page and underlining like every other line. It was just like, I've realized like I've read it basically twice now, because you need to kind of go back in and use it as a living text. And you learn something new each time. It's just that dense. And all the pieces are really necessary to go together. to be able to actually move forward. And she talks about that, right? For true change, you don't want to just like run right in with this stuff. You want to think about your approach. You want to reflect deeply yourself before you're implementing anything. So here we go. Here are some learn to learn skills that she talks about. And she prefaces this with like kind of what is information processing. I just want to dig into these learn to learn skills. So she's like, right, the first thing we do is we size it up and break it down. So does this seem hard? How do I need to organize myself? In investigating history, we talk about as part of the investigating sources routine, that first kind of step is like, what kind of source is this, right? What am I like attuning to? Is there an author, right? What's the bias? So that kind of thing, right? How do I organize myself, get ready? Are there strategies that I'm already thinking I can use? Then we scan the hard drive. Have I seen something similar to this before? Have I seen this thing before? What's the opposite of the thing I'm looking at? So we're trying to access that prior knowledge, if you will.
Hi, this is Leah popping in to share the freebie for this episode, the Leader Bundle. You can find it at the blog post for this episode, www.lindsaywithlyons.com/blog/240. Now back to the show.
My favorite part of this, and I think the places where she offers the most support and I think could be the most transformative we could really lean into here, particularly based on some of the feedback we've gotten around investigating history, is chew and remix. So this is the third step. So questions a learner might ask themselves here. How is this connected to what I already know? Is anything confusing? How could I make sense of it? Which of the 4 cognitive routines can I use? She elaborates on this, but basically it's like, distinguishing like how are different things similar or different, systems, right? Whole to part to whole. What are the kind of interrelationships of this concept? Relationships, action, reaction, and perspectives, right? These are kind of the 4 cognitive routines: distinctions, systems, relationships, perspectives. But what I really want to lean into here is that one of the biggest pieces of feedback we've gotten from the grade 3 and 4 pilot in the state of Massachusetts for our investigating history curriculum that was just piloted in the school year 24-25 is our kids don't have enough background knowledge about this content to be able to engage the way they need to. And I think an expansive view, and you've heard me say this a lot, so sorry, but an expansive view of background knowledge in the sense of like, what experiences have we had? What metaphors, and I love that she uses this as a tool, what metaphors can we link to? How is this similar to something I have literally experienced in my life, or something that maybe is not a scholarly source, quote unquote, but is something that I am aware of? I know about this concept in this other space. Like, how can I link to that so that I can engage in this step 3 of chew and remix? Like, I am thinking about this thing, I'm connecting it, I'm remixing it in my brain, I'm making it my own. And then I can go on to step 4 and 5, which are skillful practice, where I'm kind of like, practicing, applying, I'm making some small changes and stretching myself, monitoring my progress, that stuff. And then 5, making it sticky. So I am using the skill, I'm teaching someone else or telling someone else about it, maybe engaging in some retrieval practice. But that chew and remix, like, how do I link it from like the new thing coming in to what I already know? I think is gold and such an opportunity, given all of the kind of frustration or kind of not knowing what to do with the fact that teachers are reporting that their students don't have, quote, the background knowledge for some of this historical content. So, I mean, one of the things that I want to kind of name is that she talks about collectivist cultures and these 5 principles she lays out of collectivist cultures, and then she links what she calls cultural learning tools, or these cognitive tools in these 4 different categories to support kids in their information processing or in those kind of learn to learn skills. And so the 4 kind of categories of tools are around memory. So kind of building schema and connecting to those existing funds of knowledge that we just talked about. Making a metaphor is an example that she shares. I love that. As well as talk and wordplay. I love the idea that she is connecting to collectivist cultures, like gravitation to oral histories and dialogue, and connects to sociocultural learning theory. Like, we talk and think as we talk. I am a verbal processor. I'm learning this more and more as I grow up. But I think a lot of kids, I've seen it in circles, Socratic seminars, small group discussions in my own classroom. there is something that happens when we talk to one another. We expand our thinking. And talking to James Nottingham in that earlier interview I referenced on the podcast, he kind of expanded my ideas of, what is the purpose of a discussion? The goal should always be that we're expanding our one another's thinking, right? So when we engage in a discussion, we don't want to come out as being right. We want to come out as having kind of our minds blown, right? Like an expanded sense or more nuanced sense of a concept than when we went in with our own original ideas, right? Patterns and puzzles is another kind of thing. So this could be like an open sort. I've always loved open sorts, or like drawing a concept map. So thinking about how different pieces are connected within a concept, as well as perspective taking, which we do all of the time in history, but something like a protocol like World Cafe, or I've heard like talking heads or something like this, right? Is like ways that we could kind of bring perspective taking to the forefront. I also think about leading change. So for adults as well as students, thinking about facilitating and helping people come to the realization of a disorienting dilemma by just sharing a little bit of information that causes people to say, whoa, this isn't what I thought it was, right? I am having a little bit of disorientation here because I thought things were this way, and this new information is just kind of blowing my mind and making me think I need to rethink this. And research has shown that doing that in groups, having that disorienting dilemma and being able to verbally process it in a group setting is actually most beneficial because you can, quote, try on other ways of thinking, which I absolutely love. So thinking about like how we coach students using some of Zaretta Hammond's ideas around learn skills. Actually, I mean, she says, we literally teach this to kids. We teach them how the information processing kind of arc works, and we teach them to learn skills, and we help them become aware of this, and we help them recognize and literally hand over to them. Don't like control it as the teacher. We're all going to do this thing now, right? We're going to use this tool. But to say to students, hey, these are some tools. Recognize what works for you. Recognize when you might use it and be able to use it on your own. And what I love is that she encourages people to just play with the tools, like low stakes, just play with them at first, right? Figure them out. Don't try to control it as the teacher, but do prompt the reflection of the students. And I just think this whole thing is just so cool, and so meaningful. So I think the large piece here. This is a little bit of a different episode because I'm kind of like just spewing ideas that I'm hearing. But I think the one big piece in terms of mindset is around cognitive coaching is key to school transformation. Like doing this well as a teacher, as a team of teachers, as a school is super important. And how do you do that? Well, one, you yourselves as educators and we ourselves as educators, as coaches, right? We need to know this information. We need to know how kids learn. We need to know the 5 learn to learn skills ourselves. We need to be aware of some cultural learning tools that students can use when they're thinking strategically and meta-strategically. We also have to be aware of the key concepts we want kids to grapple with. So as James Nottingham says, Zaretta Hammond also says, right, this concept, like being able to conceptually grasp things is super important. And she shares a conceptual grasp scale in the book that goes all the way from like a 0 out of a 0. It's a 0 to 6 scale. So the 0 is like, I don't even know what I don't know, basically, all the way to 6, where it's called a symphonic grasp, which I love, which is like, now I can use this concept in new ways. I can see the less obvious relationships. I can critique other concepts and ideas because I'm all the way here, right? And of course, there's like different pieces along the way. But to just know, one, what concepts are important that I need my students to know, like what's most essential. 2, like, how do I know that they actually know? Like, where are they in that 0 to 6 scale? And how do I know that, right? And then when we are thinking about how they are learning and grasping those concepts, we are thinking about those learn skills and those cultural learning tools we're exposing kids to. And we're thinking about those one-on-one cognitive conversations that we have structurally made time for in the actual instructional either period or school day for younger kids in elementary settings. And finally, I think, again, I said I would return to this later, but this idea of over scaffolding is something that every passing week, month, year, I am just more and more aware of. And I love Zaretta Hammond's language around responsive, right? We talk about culturally responsive teaching. We need to lean into the responsive part. What she says is we have too many just in case supports, right? So like sentence frames that don't ask kids to actually like make sense of these multiple complex ideas, pre-written sentence stems that they might not even need, overuse of note taker worksheets, excessive anchor charts. Like we have all of these things that we're like, well, we'll give this and we'll give this and we'll give this because they might need it, right? Or some kids might need it. Instead, we want to be responsive to what each kid does need and turn over, ideally, the tools to a kid themselves to figure out, oh, I need this, right? I need something, and this tool is available. This will work for me because I know how I learn, right? And so we want the just-in-time supports versus all of the just-in-case supports. So she has a ton of really helpful kind of quote-unquote look-fors for over-scaffolding. That's like, oh, are you doing this? You might be over-scaffolding, right? And it's a beautifully laid out table with lots of details. So I highly, again, encourage you to get the book and check all of that out. Okay, this was basically a love letter to Zaretta Hammond in her book, but I hope that you got some concrete ideas out of it. And if nothing else, that you are thoughtful about how we center students' cognitive processing power and rebuilding that up in your school transformation efforts.
If you like this episode, I bet you'll be just as jazzed as I am about my coaching program for increasing student-led discussions in your school. Shane Safir and Jamila Dugan talk about a pedagogy of student voice in their book, Street Data. They say students should be talking for 75% of class time. Do students in your school talk for 75% of each class period? I would love for you to walk into any classroom in your community and see this in action. If you're smiling to yourself as you listen right now, grab 20 minutes on my calendar to brainstorm how I can help you make this big dream a reality. I'll help you build a comprehensive plan from full-day trainings and discussion protocols like Circle and Socratic Seminar to follow-up classroom visits where I can plan, witness, and debrief discussion-based lessons with your teachers. Sign up for a nerdy, no-strings-attached brainstorm call at lindsaybethlyons.com/contact. Until next time, leaders, think big, act brave, and be your best self.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.